Well, thank you very much. Very good introduction. Ich verstehe meistens, aber ich spreche nur ein bisschen Deutsch. So I'll continue in English, but thank you very much for bringing me here. And like it was said in the introduction, it is a pretty essential topic, and most things starts and stop with the story. So let me just take a few moments to just recap what is happening right now. So we all know that all these devices and all this software is emerging that enables everyone basically to create a nice video or any other content online. And once it's created, we have a bunch of services that enables us to put it online and distribute it to the whole world. So things like YouTube, Facebook, Flickr, and lately Pinterest and other services are just enabling you to basically create your own channels to the whole world. And then the last thing that's happening is that all the content is actually becoming open and searchable. So everybody can access this content and mash up and remix and create their own stories. And there's a few steps that are leading to this open content. One thing is what's called APIs, which is application programming interfaces. And for those of you who are not geeks, it's basically a way for programmers to access content on big services. So services like YouTube and Facebook have APIs. So basically you can grab links to the videos and photos on those services and mash them up into your own story, basically. And there's a few other things. So blogging and also Facebook and all these things are teaching us to put categories and tags and other kinds of metadata on the video, which means that it becomes much more searchable and easier for everyone else to access and do stuff with. And of course, there's companies like Apple and Google and others working on making search more advanced. So basically things like image recognition. So if you know that my face is Bjarke, then you can search for Bjarke and all the video with me appears. Things like that are just making it really possible to access all this content. And then finally, we have all these legal issues, but we have organizations like Creative Commons in the US working on solving that part of the equation. So it's actually also becoming more and more legal to actually grab stuff and do things with it without being sued. So those are the things that are happening right now, which I think most of us agree on. So they're basically leading to some pretty revolutionary things. I think the two main things is the way the stories are told and who is doing the storytelling. And let me just start with the first part, who's doing the storytelling. Before I go on with that, I just want to show you one little example of what all this open content and the APIs and the search and all that can lead to. So Getty Images built this thing called Getty Mood Stream that basically lets you search into Getty's database and set some moods. So you can choose if the story should be calm or relaxed or different parameters defining the moods of the story. And you can choose if it should have audio, video, and so on. And the transitions and certain settings you can set in this online interface and then click a button and then it's going to generate a story like it's doing right now. Let me just check that. I'm not sure I actually put volume on it. So this story I set to calm, or I set it to be a little bit sad and calm, and then this monkey appears. So it's actually showing me a slideshow with videos and images, all just based on search and APIs. So it's sort of a gadget, but it's interesting to see how easy it is to create a little story like this. And you can save your stories and share them with other people and so on. So that's just a little example of how easy it is to access stuff. So basically this was how the world looked for the last 150 years or so in the media industry. So we had some assets which were produced by journalists or filmmakers or others that were going out into the world recording, and then we had gatekeepers that were putting it all together and broadcasting it, and then we had the rest of us who could basically take our remote control and turn on the TV or shut it off, and that was our options. Or we could, if it was a newspaper, we could open the newspaper and so on. Now, from now on, it's going to look more like this. So we have a bunch of assets, and we can all access them in different ways. So sometimes we're still just a viewer. Sometimes we just want to see an awesome video about a t-shirt, and we turn on YouTube, and we look at it, and we go again. But sometimes we want to do something. Sometimes we want to remix. Sometimes maybe we're just commenting. Sometimes we're actually creating the content ourselves. So we're the video filmers or the photographers. And sometimes we're curating stuff. A lot of the new services are about curating. Even Facebook, you know, you can like and all these things. So you can kind of rate it. And it's all fluid. So one person can be many different roles. Sometimes I'm viewer, sometimes I'm remixer, and so on. And inside this whole fluid shell is all the content that are being mashed up, basically. Just to give you a few examples on how different actors or different people are entering into the space of publishing. So I have one example here with JetBlue. It's a big US airlines company, and they had a big crisis in 2007 on, I think it was on Valentine's Day, where a bunch of passengers got stuck for about 10 hours in their planes on the runway in JFK Airport, and they got so much negative press about it, and everybody was really angry and so on. And then their CEO chose to use YouTube, and he basically, you know, instead of going through the established media channels, instead of trying to get on CNN or ABC News or others, he went directly to YouTube with this video.
Dear JetBlue customers, just wanted to introduce myself. I'm David Nealman. I'm the Chief Executive Officer and founder of JetBlue, and I have a quick message for you that I want to share with you. Obviously, the events of the past week that have been well documented in the press are really something that obviously is the most difficult time in our history. And you know, as really all challenges, as when they come your way, there are a couple things that you can do. You can ignore it and pretend like it was an aberration, or you can do an examination and determine if there's something that you can do internally to make sure that that never happens again. And I wanted to assure you, as the CEO of this company, that the events that transpired last week and the way that they transpired will never happen again. I just want to outline a few things that we're doing within the next 7 days.
So basically, he's now telling, you know, a couple of concrete things they do to avoid it. And this video turned everything around. People started being really happy again, and they got a lot of positive press about it. And I think what's interesting is his appearance is very different from TV. So he's really sort of captured the way you communicate in social media. He's talking much more to you, and he's like, hello, I'm the CEO of blah, blah, blah. So that's an interesting shift in communication. The second thing that they're doing really well is, I mean, one thing is going on YouTube and saying, you know, we're really sorry. But you actually have to give it an impact, you actually have to go back and change the way you do business, which they're willing to do. So they decided to make a lot of change, and he's telling about that in the video. And that's what I think is also interesting, that there's this new connection between the companies and the consumers, where the consumers become angry and the companies then are sort of more or less forced to change stuff, but they do change stuff and then they communicate back. Another example is Queen Rania of Jordan. I mean, she's really beautiful and very intelligent and highly educated, which is a good match for communicating. But she's created a really big impact by running her own YouTube channel and talking about moderate Islam, basically, and sort of giving a totally other view on Islam that a lot of the mainstream media is giving. So that's another example. And talking about connections between sort of companies and the public, and now leading to the Arab world, of course leads to one of the best examples of the social media, which was what started the entire Arab Spring. So basically all these protests in the street, and I think there's been some really interesting examples there on how you can collect all the stuff that is produced. So there are so many people producing small video clips. It all started with a little video clip, and then photos and so on. And you had a couple of different startups that really quickly emerged, and they created these interfaces where people could search for stuff and put it together to little stories. And one of them created this project called 18 Days Egypt, which was basically a web interface, and people could go in and they could search on YouTube for something, for their own name, for instance, and drag it and drop it. Unfortunately, I can't show you the backend interface. I don't have access to that, but I can show you a little trailer which shows the kind of people that were involved.
This morning, I want us to...
Let's go to the next one.
أنا وألفي كنا هنا.
أنا وولادي كنت هنا.
أنا كنت فخور.
أنا بالتحرير. أنا وعيلتي كلها كنا هنا وفخورين جدا باللي عملوه الشباب المصريين.
أنا كنت على الفيسبوك.
أنا كنت بصور.
أنا كنت بتويت. أنا خدت شيء من بالي وتسجيل التاريخ.
ممكن نحكي قصتنا عن طريق إعلام نصنعه بإيدينا ونصنعه بنفسنا.
هتفت مسلم ومسيحي ايد واحدة.
أنا كنت على الكوبري يوم 28 جمعة الغضب وسط الغاز المثير للدموع. يوم ال 18 لما مبارك اتنحى احتفلت وسجلت احتفالات الشعب.
قصتك تهمنا ودلوقتي في مكان ان انت تحكي لنا عنها.
انت عشتها وسجلتها، يلا نكتب تاريخ بلادنا. شارك على 18daysinegypt.com.
قول يا جماعه كلنا ايد واحده.
So basically, I think looking at this video, it's really interesting to see the kind of people that participate. I mean, we're all a media, and we're all participating in creating stuff if there's an issue that bothers us, basically. So the actual who is doing the storytelling, I've talked a little bit about now. Now, the other thing that's changing is how the stories are done. So this whole idea of digital media is actually about to sort of really change the form of the stories. What always happens when a new media emerges is that you replicate the old one. So when radio emerged, it was basically newspapers with sound on. And then after a while, radio discovered their own form and radio documentary and so on. Then TV came along, and to begin with, TV was radio with pictures, and then TV found its own form and started TV documentaries and all this stuff. For a long time, the web has also just been a replication of print and broadcast. YouTube essentially is just the same storytelling format as TV. It's just distributed in a different way. But the next step we're about to enter is actually finding our own storytelling form for online. And it's interesting if you're in the media industry, because where do you sort of point to make yourself valuable? I think, as I spoke about to begin with, collecting, producing video and photos and all this stuff has become really easy for almost anybody. I'm not saying that everybody is great at filming, but it's just become much, much easier. And distributing has also become really easy. Anybody can set up a blog or a YouTube channel. But what's still really hard is to make a user experience, basically, or a viewer experience. And to do that, you need really good skills at storytelling. And you need to be able to build what I called interface, but basically nice packages where things are wrapped and have a certain interface. So the whole interface idea of clicking things and then other stuff emerges, and blending existing media formats. all these things, like creating this refined story and a refined user interface, this is where things become really difficult, and I think this is where traditional journalists and others from the media industry can really add something that everybody can't add. So let me, or it could be advertising people as well, but anybody doing stories. So let me give you a few examples. So one thing that's really changing is this idea of linear. So again, for the last 150 years or so, all stories have been more or less linear. You start one place, you go along, and you stop another place, and you get to an end. It's the same, you know, with a book or a magazine or a newspaper. You can browse through the pages. But in the future, stories online are starting to look more like this. So you have many different tracks. Sometimes you might have a main track and side tracks on the story. And as you go along, you can do all these different things. You can be watching, or you can be commenting. Sometimes you can even be buying stuff inside the story. So here's one example from YouTube. It's a British NGO who's trying to teach people. They're called A Different Ending. They're trying to teach people, or young people, not to use weapons, and especially knives, in the street. And they created this project on YouTube, which is almost like a little game based on video.
They're not going to get away with it.
Right, mate, how's it going? You all right?
Yeah. They shank Shaw. What do they think's going to happen?
Come on, mate.
It's going to go up tonight, big time.
So basically you get an introduction, and then you can choose, do I take the knife or do I leave it? And depending on what you choose, you're gonna get different stories. And there's many choices as you go along. Of course, I think 90% of people take the knife because it's more entertaining. But it's really teaching you what happens if you make a specific choice. It has different outcomes. Another example of an interface is this Louis Vuitton project. Louis Vuitton has been doing online storytelling for a while. It started with something called Louis Vuitton Journeys, and it was basically just small documentary movies with stars that had something from Louis Vuitton, and they were telling their story. But this is a sort of a micro-site experience based on video that they built with a famous Japanese designer. Kusama is her name. Basically you can navigate different clips. So you can see her own story here. It moves to this, and you click it, and plays a video about her childhood. And you can browse all these different things. Then you can see her art and her design, and you can see an interview. So basically, this is just an interface. I mean, it's not rocket science, but it's taken a bunch of video clips, and instead of just putting them one by one on YouTube, you wrap them in a really nice experience. But it makes all the difference. It was the same in the old days with magazines. I mean, that's what makes a magazine great, is the design and how pictures and all the elements work together. Or if you're creating a TV show, I mean, you need to have really nice graphics, and you need to have a nice setting and all these things. So that's the next generation of web content. It's becoming more refined, basically. So I have another example, which is something I created myself. So I did a TED Talk. I don't know if you know TED.com, but if you don't, you should really go and check it out. There's some really great videos and talks with people. But I had this 15-minute long video from my talk, and I started wondering, okay, how could I break it up into something more interactive? And I created this sort of format that's a little bit between a magazine and a film. So you have a front page, and you can go into so I cut the video up into 3 parts, and you can go directly to one of them, or you can also just browse the pages. So there's a little introduction.
So I'm going to talk today about the birth of a new narrative language.
It's a little bit strange that I'm talking there and I'm talking here. But basically I have a video and then you can browse downwards.
So I'm going to talk today about...
Let me just kill the audio. So you can watch my video and then you can browse down into subsections and read more. So the stuff I'm talking about in the video is, if you want to learn more about that, you can sort of browse through extra pages that has little texts and infographics and stuff like that that explain. So I think that's one of the interesting things about these interactive formats is that you can actually help people select what they want. So if people want to listen to me just talk for 3 minutes, you can do that. But if there's one specific thing that you find really interesting, you could dive deeper in and learn more and go back again. So that's another example of how you can change things. So what's also happening and what I think is sort of the next future step is that a lot of these ideas of making things interactive and mashing up magazine and film and all this stuff has been really complicated to do in the past. Either you have to have a team of Flash and HTML programmers, or you have to have a budget to hire somebody to do it, and so on. It's really hard for content people, for journalists, for filmmakers, for photographers, and others to do all these things themselves. It's easy to make a blog, it's easy to make a YouTube channel, but to create something like the Louis Vuitton story and so on has so far been difficult. Basically, we're lacking publishing tools for interactive. But there's a whole wave of small, interesting tools emerging at the moment. And I'm actually creating one of them. So my Story Planet project emerged out of being really, really annoyed about Flash and all this stuff, because ever since I started working with these formats, I had to, sometimes I didn't have budget enough for programmers, so I had to teach myself how to code in Flash, and I spent a lot of time with that. So I really, really wanted a tool where I could just take my video, take my photos, take a Google map, take a YouTube video, and mash it all up together and design a nice interface without having to code. So we're in what we call private beta right now. So we have a few testers working on our tool. But I actually want to just give you a little demo of how it works. So you have this interface that you log into. It's all based online. Now it says, welcome Jenny, because I'm borrowing an account. So we're working on a project with an NGO called Witness. Witness is actually a pretty interesting NGO because they train people in the third world to record video. And they actually trained the guys that started the whole revolution in Egypt. But they've been, they are celebrating 20 years anniversary this year. And so they wanted to create this little interactive timeline, which we set up for them. So you can basically, there's nothing here, but you can click through all the years. And on each year, you can click into, it was founded by Peter Gabriel, so that's why he's here. You can click into these subsections. So again, you can navigate left and right and up and down. And you can go to another section. So that's 1988, and you can go down. Now you notice here in 1985, there's actually no real content. So let me show you the secret sauce, because one thing is this player, but we have this interface behind where you can actually edit the whole story. So here I have a grid, and the grid determines if I move, I can create any kind of structure inside the grid. So right now I have 1, 2, 3, and on this one I can go downwards. But I could basically choose to create a new tile. These little pages, or what you want to call it, we call tiles, and I can move them to any place I want and basically create any kind of sitemap. But let me just show you the, yeah?
Reminds me a little bit of Prezi.
Yep. It's a little bit like Prezi. Prezi is more for if I wanted to do a presentation that I was showing you. And this is more for creating a story that anybody can click through. So, but yeah, it's a little bit along the same line. Prezi has an infinite canvas, basically, and we have this grid with little tiles. But yeah. So if you look at this page, 1985, it's very empty. So let me just go into 1985. So I go back here and I click, and then I have a media browser, and I can add a little video clip. So it's here, and maybe I just want it to be a little bit bigger, and I want it to be behind that sticker there. And actually, I also want this to just be bold, and this thing should be, actually, it should be a little more text. For now, I'll just do like this and put some more text in, and I'll move it down to here so it looks like it can continue. And I save it. Come on, internet, save it. And preview. And then you see it has a video clip now, and I can play it. And the text moved down. And I still have the other pages here. So it's as easy as that. And then there's a few other components. So for instance, I have a thing like a hotspot that I can add, and it's basically an invisible button that I can put on top of something, and I can tell it to link to a web page, or I can tell it to link to one of the other tiles. So let's say I wanted to go back to start if I click 1985. So I just save it and preview. And now if I click here, it goes back to the start. So, so you can actually do a lot with just those very simple things where you can add little hidden buttons and make stuff navigate around. But obviously, as we go along, we're going to make it much more advanced. And our idea is to open up to third-party developers, so you can create your own little plugins. So like I showed you with that hotspot I put on, or a video I dragged in, you would actually be able to write your own components or plugins. So let's say you wanted to do a PayPal thing to take payments from people, you could do that, or do something that loads a Google map or something else. We're going to have a lot of basic ones, but we're going to add more as we go along. So that's basically Story Planet. So that's it for now. Do you have some questions?